Welcome, Soundies, to our Sound for Video session. Today is the 12th of December, 2021. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm super excited because we have a special guest. And let me just go ahead and introduce her really quick. So our guest today is a full-time assistant dialogue editor for Nickelodeon Animation and a co-founder of the Welcome Matt Radio podcast production company, where she is also the sound designer and audio engineer and one of the performers of the Legacy Saga fantasy podcast series. She also runs an active TikTok account with a nice mix of how-to and career advice for up-and-coming film and audio professionals. Let's welcome this person of many hats, including dialogue editor, sound designer, and audio engineer, Austin Olivia Kendrick. Welcome, Austin. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Let's talk a little bit about, I'm just dying to know because I think a lot of people have questions about how do you get, if you're really passionate about sound and you want to get into sound for film, sound for video, animation, whatever, how do you get there? So I'm curious, as a 5-year-old, did somebody ask you, what do you want to do when you grow up? And you said, I want to be a sound designer. How did that happen?
Whenever people ask this question, I always joke that I kind of tripped and stumbled and fell face first accidentally into sound. When I was first going to college, I was initially going to school to study technical theater. I was going to be a stage manager for live productions. And so part of that degree program was I was sewing costumes. I was hanging lights. I learned how to weld in the scene shop my second week of college. And so I was taking all these classes in all the different areas of technical production. And part of that was sound classes. And as I started getting more and more into it, I realized, oh, this is a lot of fun. Oh, I think I want to do this. And so I called my parents halfway through my sophomore year, and without any prompting, I had never worked on a film before in my life. I called them and I said, I think I want to be a sound designer for films. And they just said, okay, cool, great, sounds good. So I transferred schools, transferred programs, and I ended up at Chapman, their Dodge College of Film and Media Arts. And I ended up getting my BFA in film production, graduated in 2020, and yeah.
So with the technical theater, you're studying technical theater. Mm-hmm. What was it that made sound in particular click? Because there's a lot of things. As a stage manager, you're like, that's a busy job. Like there's a lot going on, and you have to be coordinating with all the different departments to to pull those shows off. What was it about sound that drew you that direction?
I loved how immersive it was. I loved how, I remember one of my first assignments in our basic sound and lighting class was like, okay, we're going to give you a show, build just like a soundscape for the show, 30 seconds that you would give in a technical presentation to all the rest of the department heads. And I had so much fun with that project because the idea of getting to literally build a world, I can close my eyes and it transports me to a different place. That was something that was just so magical to me. And I loved stage management. I was very good at stage management, but I wasn't getting a much creative fulfillment out of it. And and I didn't realize how much I was missing that until I started going into sound and kind of seeing how much of a sandbox that you could play in that was. I just kind of chased that down.
Until you're here. Very good.
Exactly.
And so what were some of your if you could identify what are some of your experiences or films or theater experiences that kind of maybe when you were younger really kind of opened your ears, I guess. I don't know the right way to put it, but something that really inspired you to help get you here.
I mean, it has to be Star Wars. It has to be Ben Burtt. Ben Burtt is very much one of my personal heroes. His work and his ethos and the way that he approached the sound design for Star Wars was mind-boggling to me. It kind of changed my whole perception of how sound was done. It has to be Star Wars. And I'm a big fan of all of his work, but something about Star Wars is still very, very special to me.
Yeah, it's probably the Wilhelm scream, isn't it? Isn't it?
I just did a few TikToks about that because that is one of my favorite pieces of sound of like film history that I feel like no one is aware of, and that no one is aware of that it's tied to this very influential, sound designer, just because Ben Burt thought it would be funny to
Yeah.
slip the Wilhelm scream into all his movies. So that
Yeah.
had a little something to do with it.
It's, and it's funny too, when somebody pointed out to me, so what is the Wilhelm scream? A lot of people don't know, but here it's sort of the insider joke really at this point, right? I mean, it's kind of, Ben was the one that said, this is the craziest scream. It's in a
It's the most
million
ridiculous
movies.
sounding scream.
It's like, "Rah!" It's really funny. And then I never noticed it in Star Wars until someone specifically pointed it out to me. Because it's a scene where Luke and Leia are in the Death Star trying to get away. They're shooting across the bridges and platforms at some stormtroopers. One of the stormtroopers gets shot, falls
Off the
in,
platform.
and the crazy Wilhelm scream.
One of my favorite instances is that I listened to a podcast called 20,000 Hertz, which is
Yes.
fantastic. I could recommend it to everyone here. They did an episode on the Wilhelm scream, and they interviewed some prominent, sound editors. And one of them mentioned, he's like, I put it in the Goofy movie. It had, why did the Goofy movie need that? It didn't, but I put it there anyways. So.
And it's in these more, I mean, Star Wars is supposed to be, it's a space drama, right? A space adventure drama. It's not supposed to. Well, it does have plenty of tongue in cheek, I guess. I guess Wilhelm scream. All right, very good. So, so now you're working at Nickelodeon Animation. How does that process work? How do you get out? So you're in film school, you're getting ready to graduate, you probably start applying to various studios, I assume. How did all that happen?
Well, I graduated in 2020, which was a very interesting time to jump into any industry, but especially the film industry, because it had pretty much ground to a halt. Sound editing was one of those things that was able to move home relatively easily compared to other areas of film. The issue is that things have to be filmed in order to get to post-production.
Yes.
And nothing could be filmed. So out of school, I moved up to LA, which was a bold move in the middle of a pandemic, but I committed wholeheartedly. And I pretty much just threw my resume anywhere I could. I initially started, my first job out of college I was working at a different podcast production company, not Welcome Matt, which I had started with my friends, but I worked there for about 8 months. And then when it came to Nickelodeon, that was literally a cold application. Like, I think I saw the job posting on LinkedIn. Wow. And I had never worked, I had sound designed one animated film. That's it. But I thought, you know what? It can't hurt. I know I can handle, I know I can handle dialogue editing. I know I love doing it, so why not? So I tossed my resume at them around, I want to say like March, and then at the end of April of this year, I got the interview, and I started working for them in June.
Amazing. And I don't want to step on any toes, but can you tell us in terms of what shows you're working on or what you're excited about?
The cool thing about the position at Nickelodeon, which is very rare, is that I am staff at the studio. I'm not hired on for one project, as is the usual with most studios. So it's pretty much like whatever shows are going on right now, the audio department handles. So I am currently working on Rugrats, the revival of Rugrats, Transformers, and Monster High. And then also working on a few pilots that we're developing that potentially might be picked up for series. So
wow, I mean, some amazing Transformers, Rugrats. I mean, wow,
stuff that I remember like growing up watching. It's very surreal to be like working on them now and like see my name in the credits.
Absolutely, I can imagine. Only imagine. So let's cut a distinction here for those that are not already intimately familiar with the distinction between, for example, dialogue editing and sound design. If you could kind of just describe those a little bit and how they're different and how they work together.
Yeah. Dialogue editing, it is pretty much just the handling of the human voice, the actors' performances, in whatever the production is that you're working on. It's funny because I came from a world of live production. That's what I studied in school. So post sound generally comes in after everything's been shot, everything's been edited together, picture locked. It's the very last thing that happens. So usually I would be, as a dialogue editor, one of the last people touching the film, the show, whatever it is working on. In animation, it works backwards, wherein dialogue is actually the very first thing that gets done before things are even animated, because the animators have to animate around the performer's performance. Is very important. So we actually get to build the skeleton of the episodes, which is like a really exciting thing to get to like be at the source, and help shape the episode. But generally, when it comes to dialogue editing, we are doing a lot of cleaning, a lot of raw audio. Not a lot of, all raw audio is going to have imperfections in it. There's going to be background noise. There's going to be clicks. There's going to be pops. There's going to be rustling. And so it is our job to try to clean it as much as possible while still preserving the dialogue, making sure that that doesn't get muffled or dig into the vocal quality of it. We don't want to gouge that out. We just want to make sure that you are hearing the actors saying what words they're supposed to say as clear as possible. Yeah, that's kind of my field, in the way of how that plays into larger like sound design. It's kind of one piece of the puzzle, because the dialogue has to play along with the sound effects and the ambience and the Foley and the music. It kind of is one small area of a larger picture.
Absolutely, yeah. In the case of, and again, if I have to be very sensitive here. They're not everything I can share about my job either, and I understand if you can't do so. Just if we can't talk about it, let me know. But I'm curious, do they, with animation studios, do they also have re-recording mixers that bring everything together, or is it the sound designer that does that, or how does that usually work?
It's interesting because at Nickelodeon, our audio department is pretty much nothing but dialogue editors. I mentioned earlier that dialogue is the very first thing that gets done in a production. And it's because they can't animate without the actors' performances. And so it is very crucial to have a quick turnaround when the actor comes in and does a full recording session, being able to quickly turn that back around for the show and have it prepped and have the lines that the showrunners want to hear ready to go. That turnaround is crucial, having that as short as possible. So pretty much the audio department is just dialogue editors, so we can do those quick turnarounds. Then we pretty much, once we have everything in place, the episode's been animated, we're ready to go. All the ADR has been done, all the ADR has been put in place, all the original records, everything's been cleaned and ready to go. We will generally put it out to a different post house that will do the rest of the sound edit. They'll do the sound effects, they'll do the Foley, they'll put in the music, and they'll do the re-recording mixing. Okay. So yeah, it's something we're a little bit separated from, but yeah.
What's so cool to me though is it didn't occur to me that obviously in animation you would do the soundtrack you would do the dialogue tracks first. Does that put you then in a position where you, in a lot of ways, you are defining the kind of the pacing of the show, or are you working with a director to kind of work on pacing? Because I mean, it's one thing to clean up an audio track and get it sounding right, but then cutting that all together and defining the pacing is another kind of art in and of itself. How does that work there?
So a good chunk of our job, I mentioned turning around those recording sessions, is that we literally just go through the raw recording sessions and we get a copy of the recording script, and that has like all of the takes listed out, and it will have, the showrunner will have gone through and circled which takes they want to hear. But we will go through and we will cut up every single take and we will rename every single one so that it has the line number, the character name, the take, and like all the information for exactly, you can read it and know, okay, this is exactly what words are being said in this audio clip. we will pull those takes that the showrunner wants to hear. And then we will sit with them and we will basically go through and listen to all the takes that they've circled and been like, are you good with that? Do you want to listen to any other ones? And sometimes it's very much like, yep, that's good. Yep, that's good. Or like, hey, can you just like shorten this space? Just make it a little quicker. Sometimes it's like, wow, I didn't love that take at all. Let's hear some other ones, which is why we have to have all of them ready to go.
Mhm.
It's a very collaborative process with the showrunner of getting to kind of shape the pacing and the performance of that character, which is really really fun. I'm not gonna lie, it's really cool to kind of get to be that ingrained in that process, because usually sound is at the very end. Usually we don't get to have any say in what lines are chosen. We don't get any say in that. We just have to make it work. And
Mhm.
so kind of getting to be a part of that beginning and shaping the episode is really really cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. Unusual. It's an unusually really interesting and cool opportunity in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
So that is awesome. Um, I want to talk a little bit as well. You also do some sound design. You're one of the founders of Welcome Matt, and you put on an audio drama. Is that the right term for it? An audio
Yeah,
drama?
yeah, that's
Okay.
perfect.
So it's called the Legacy Saga.
Mhm.
Tell me how all of that evolved. How did you get to that? And it sounds to me like the neat thing about an audio saga is that it's 100% audio. The story is driven 100% by audio. So tell me
Mhm.
about that. How did that start up and where are you at now?
Well, I said this to you a little bit earlier, but I didn't understand. Like, I'd heard the term passion project before, but I didn't understand it until we started doing the Legacy Saga and we upstarted Welcome at Radio. So basically, I am a huge Dungeons and Dragons nerd. I play a lot of Dungeons and Dragons, and I've been playing with the same group of friends since I was 16. And my now roommate, basically wrote and homebrewed an entire campaign for us to play that ended up being a trilogy. We played it for 2 years. We really got to grow with these characters and really collaborate and build the story together. And it was a story that we really means a lot to us. The characters mean the world to us. And so, right around the time the pandemic hit, actually a little bit before, my fiance came to me and my now roommate and said, "Hey, I'm a voice actor and a vocal director. Moss, our roommate, is a writer. Austin's a sound designer. What's stopping us from taking this story that we built together and turning it into an audio drama? Who does that nowadays, And we were like, wow, nothing's stopping us. Yeah, why not? And so the three of us wrote like a proof of concept pilot. We snuck out and recorded it, and I put together a little proof of concept pilot, and we played it for the rest of our team, and we said, we want to do this. Are you guys in? And they said yes. And so we launched the podcast in May of 2021, and after like a year of just working on the scripts, doing table reads, doing edits, casting. There's over 70 characters in season 1. So
Wow.
yeah, it was a big undertaking. Thankfully, we have a host of incredibly talented and kind friends who are willing to jump on and bring these characters to life. So it's been this insanely wonderful experience of getting to collaborate and bring the story that means so much to us to life and getting to share it with everyone else. That's been so much fun.
Amazing. So, the thing that is so intriguing to me again is that this is like an art form that we really haven't seen a lot of since
Mhm.
before TV, or as TV was starting to get a hold.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting thing, and it's so cool to see it kind of making this resurgence where, again, driven 100% by sound.
Mhm.
Um, so cool. So 70 different actors.
Yeah.
That's a lot of engineering, and you're doing the engineering as well. So you're doing all the recordings.
Doing as many recordings as possible. Just to my right here, we actually have we have a vocal booth that we built out of PVC pipe and sound blankets. That it kind of acts as our little homebrewed recording studio.
Mhm.
As often as we can, getting people up here to record in person, which not only helps with audio quality, and I can actually be here engineering the recording sessions, but also my fiance, who is the vocal director, can give more direction as they perform. But in some cases, like we have friends who are all the way up in Seattle. And especially as we were working on the production of this during the pandemic, it wasn't really feasible to get them down here for us to go up there. So I did a lot of kind of remote troubleshooting and remote, like, okay, here's a basic setup. Okay, here's a mic to go after. What do you have? And we kind of just had to really make it work.
Yeah.
Which was a very steep learning curve, a very interesting process, but we made it work.
So how did you make it work? Did you have people setting up pillows and duvets and bedspreads all over the room? How'd you do
I had
it?
everyone sticking their mics in the closet. I
Okay.
said, just shove your clothes aside, put your mic in there. That's how they recorded Adam Driver's ADR for Rise of Skywalker, and they got nominated for an Oscar for Best Sound Editing. So
Yeah.
if it's
Yeah.
good enough for them, it's good enough for us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've heard a ton of stories about that. They had, I can't remember the actor's name who plays the Emperor, but they had to do a pickup line,
Mhm.
and he used one of those little microphones that plug into your iPhone and went
Mhm.
into the closet, and and that's what is in the film. That is
You
it.
make it work.
Yeah. Amazing. So what are the tools that you spend a lot of your days with? They're probably, I can guess what I think some of them are, but I'm just curious, what are in terms of software, what are the tools that you end up using daily?
Well, given that I'm in post-production for film and TV, I live and die by Pro Tools.
Okay.
I know some people, feel real strongly about Pro Tools, but like the reality is on the film side of things, that is the main software that is
Mhm.
used. So when I was in film school, I pretty much just dove entirely into that. So me and Pro Tools are very close friends. And then as a dialogue editor, I spend most of my time in Isotope RX8 Advanced.
Okay.
Um, very familiar with that program. That program is everything when you're a dialogue editor.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I feel that because I work mostly on spoken word content. And
Mhm.
if you want that to shine, a lot of times it's a matter of just cleaning things up. I mean, obviously it's good engineering, it's good mixing during production, but a lot of time there. Do you have any? You said that you and Pro Tools are best friends.
Mhm.
Is that really true? Do you ever have moments where you two have disagreements?
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
It's a complicated relationship. No, I I think that Pro Tools is a very robust program. It can do a lot. It is very deep. I took one of the when I was in college. They offered one of the Pro Tools certification, like the Avid certifications,
Mhm.
through my school. So I actually got credit for it, which was great. But like even in just that first level, and there's like multiple levels of this training program, I was like, I had no clue it could do any of this. And so sometimes I feel like Pro Tools can sometimes be so layered and so robust that you're like, can kind of get lost.
Mhm.
You have no clue where to look for things sometimes, and it takes a lot of practice, a lot of just going through the program to kind of figure out, oh, okay, there's this problem. Oh, okay, I know how to fix. Okay, okay, you know,
We've
that
done
can be
that
a.
before. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And when I was in college, the school that I was at only ran on PC, which is not very friendly to Pro Tools. That was a constant headache in college. And so when I graduated, I was like, it has to be Mac. I'm not going to deal with any PC problems in Pro Tools anymore. I'm not doing it. So,
It's funny
oh,
because yeah, it does seem like they've invested everything on the Mac platform just because I just traditionally that's where the music producers have been to a large extent and the post houses as well, it seems like.
mhm. Yeah, the video
For sure.
engine is built around QuickTime, and they stopped updating QuickTime for PC back in like 2016,
Yeah.
and so like
Yeah.
the video engine just rarely functions on PC anymore. So you kind of it's Mac or nothing.
Yeah. What about Isotope? So tell us about Isotope. Is your relationship with RX similar to Pro Tools? Or is it any different? And Yeah, let's start there.
I feel like Isotope, the issue that I was talking with Pro Tools earlier about it being such a layered and complex program and taking as a steep learning curve and just getting familiar with how to use it, how to navigate it, how to work it. I feel like that's like to the nth degree with Isotope. Isotope can be very intimidating. I remember when I was in college, like first trying to use it and just like nearly wanting to cry because I'm like, how do you know? And
Don't
that can be very
understand.
exactly. And that's something that can be a little, like intimidating, kind of scare you off from trying to continue to chip away at it. Um, and I'm really glad that I was kind of in a position that I had no choice but to keep trying to, pick away at it. But even now, I still have times where I'm like, where is this thing? It just comes with time and use.
Yeah, becomes muscle memory in a lot of ways, I imagine.
Exactly.
As you use it. I'm curious. So here's a weird, very niche question:
Mhm.
spectrogram view, waveform view, or both? Where do you spend most of your time?
Spectrogram, definitely.
Really? Okay. Wow.
Yeah,
No hesitation there.
no
Okay.
hesitation because I'll usually have two monitors, so I will have Pro Tools open on one and then I'll Isotope open on the other, which I can, just connect whatever I can take whatever clip I want in Pro Tools and just put it right into Isotope, goes right onto the other screen. So I don't really need the waveform because it's right there on the other screen.
Right.
But spectrogram is I like it as clear as possible. I don't want the waveform on top of it because I am looking for the most minute details in the spectrogram. I'm looking for the tiniest little clicks, the tiniest little pops, the tiniest little blocks of color to get rid of. So I'm 100% spectrogram in the rainbow setting, all the way.
Okay. Very good. And that's, I think first time people see the spectrogram, it's like, whoa, what
Yeah,
is all this about? But when it starts to kind of settle in, it's like, okay, I don't know how I lived without this. I don't know how
100%.
I was
I
able to
couldn't,
clean things. Yeah.
I could not do my job without Isotope RX, and that's not even me being hyperbolic. Like I live and die by RX. It's everything.
Very good. Um, when it comes to, I imagine it depends on the situation, but are you doing a lot of work with like the paintbrush tool and the little tools where you're really isolating individual things?
Mhm.
More time kind of just applying one of the modules across the entire clip or some of each? How does that usually look?
A little bit of both. It kind of depends on what the clip I'm working on is like, what the
Mhm.
recording I've got, what the quality is, and what issues need to be tackled with it. At Nickelodeon, we're still doing a lot of out of house recordings. When the pandemic hit, we pretty much just were like, oh my gosh, we can't bring people into studios anymore. So we sent out laptops and microphones, and the audio engineers, the recording engineers would literally like just sit on the phone with the actors and be like, okay, let's set this up, and would like have to spend time like clearing like, okay, you're good to record. But, you know, no space is perfect. So it really just depends on what the recording environment was like and what needs to be fixed. Generally, I will my favorite plugin in Isotope, mouth declick. It's my favorite. As a
Oh,
dialogue
yeah.
editor, I can't stand mouth click, so that is one I'll generally always run kind of blanket. And then I'll kind of listen through if it's a bit reverby, then it's like, oh, okay, I'll run a passive dialogue reverb. If it's a little crackly, decrackle, run it
Hmm.
over. But
Yeah.
then I will go through after that blanket stuff has kind of been taken care of. Then it's like, oh, okay, if there's little things, little imperfections. There's one actor that we work with that loves to, in the middle of his recordings, will play with his headphone cable. And so I have to go in and find those little spots and just paintbrush it out or copy and paste from another area and just because there's no plugin that's like headphone wire playing with, T headphone wire Russell. So that's when I will go in and really get surgical with it. And I I personally find that getting surgical with it is the most fun part of the whole process because there's something so satisfying about hearing a little click or a little imperfection or something and like digging through and being like, you, I found you, you're going away. It's like a little like hunter and prey. It's very fun and very satisfying when you finish all that and you listen through and you're like, oh, so clean, you send it right back. It sustains me. I have a very much a puzzle solvers type of brain. I love puzzles, so it very much well suited for me.
Perfect, perfect. I want to take a turn back and talk a little bit more about the creative side of things, and again, back to the Legacy Saga a little bit. Here is where you have an opportunity to create, again, a world of sound.
Mhm.
And when the writing is done, is any of that written in, or is that entirely your domain? And how does that whole collaboration work?
Well, it kind of depends on the episode. Usually, our writer Moss will, if there's ever like really any important sounds that they want included, they will put it in the kind of stage directions and the action lines. So I know that it's like, oh, okay, you want this hit, okay, that gets hit. The really nice thing about living with the head writer is if I'm ever in here working on it and I have a question about like, hey, what do you picture the floors are like in this space? I can just literally walk to their room and ask them really quick. It's a very collaborative space, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that it's very collaborative, kind of on all elements, and I appreciate that Moss, as a writer, will put that in,
Yeah.
and it's it's cool to know that like the writer is thinking on my front and is kind of giving me little jumping off points to play with. Um, I yeah, I couldn't ask for a more collaborative situation. It's really wonderful as a
Yeah,
creator.
absolutely. I think I'd say that those are kind of the magical situations where you're working with a team that's, you really are kind of in each other's minds. You've been there and
Mhm.
you have a pretty good sense of how to do things, and solving problems together with them it becomes kind of a second nature thing, which is really, really exciting.
Yeah,
Um,
and definitely because we, again, we created this story together. Me and this group of people, we created this story together through Dungeons and Dragons, and so we're all very intimately familiar with kind of the characters and the world and the arcs that we're going on and where we know exactly where we're going. And so it's just kind of like an even deeper layer of collaboration on the literally just story conception level. So that thread of collaboration runs through the whole thing. And that's been definitely one of my favorite parts of the whole project.
Excellent. Another kind of turn. So you had mentioned that you graduated in 2020.
Mhm.
Um, Rough time to start a career, or rough time to do anything, frankly. But one of the things that I'm curious about is that when you did find yourself, okay, I'm working from home, at least initially, um, did you have to invest a ton of money to get up and running in terms of equipment? And what did you use, and how did that go?
I pretty much I monopolized my birthday in 2020 to ask all my family members for equipment. And they're like, "We have no idea what you're talking about, but just send us a link and yeah, we'll grab it for you." So like I asked my dad for my Mac desktop. I asked my mom for an interface and for this mic and for, all my different monitors and stuff like that. So it was very much I pretty much just utilized that. But no, it was definitely I was working off of only a Mac laptop. I finished my senior thesis films. I had to sound design two thesis films. I had to finish them on my laptop in my living room on these headphones, with nothing else, by myself. So I knew that like it was feasible, but like I should probably build out a little bit. And I knew it was an investment in my career. I knew it was an investment in my future. And ultimately, the fact that right after my birthday, when I had built out my setup, it was right after that I landed that job at the podcast production company, my first job. It was because I had I had the ability to run Pro Tools. I had the ability to, I had the interface. I had the mics. I had I had everything I needed. I had the
Yeah.
plugins. So yeah.
Yeah. And that's a curiosity too. So outside of Pro Tools and Isotope, obviously as a dialogue editor, you're going to spend a lot of time there. But once you get into sound design, are there other plugins that you find that you couldn't live without?
Um, I definitely use a lot of because we have a lot of I love Wave's vocal writer
Okay.
for all my dialogue, just because that's not necessarily a dialogue editing thing. That's more of a mixing thing of kind of because some people, will go really quiet and then it'll get really loud. So being able to kind of level those out is vital. absolutely vital when it comes to mixing something that's supposed to be a podcast. So that is definitely one of my favorites. I love L2, which is a limiter. That is everything, everything
Just a
on my
classic.
just a
Yeah.
classic. You can't go
Yeah.
wrong. And when it comes to handling my sound libraries, I use Soundly, which has both like a library that once you like sign up for that platform, they have sound libraries available to you. You can buy one. You can buy a bunch of different ones, specific kind of packages to add to the library, or you can add your own sounds and kind of manage your library. So that kind of is where I hold all of my sound effects that get pulled for the Legacy Saga.
Excellent. And then I'm curious, when you are, let's take this as two separate questions. So first of all, when you're dialogue editing, are you typically in headphones or are you using near field monitors? Let's start there. Dialogue
Headphones.
editing. Headphones.
Headphones, definitely. I feel like
Interesting.
I get little, sometimes little clicks and the tiniest little things. I want to make sure that I can hear every single one. I'm very meticulous and very much a perfectionist, so I want to hear every single thing. So
Okay.
dialogue editing definitely in my I use Audio Technica M50Xs.
Very good. Very good. And then when it comes to sound design and mixing, then where are you at?
Generally, as I'm working through the like edit, kind of putting all the sound effects in place, getting all the ambiences set, getting the reverbs just right, I will still use headphones. Again, I want to hear those little detailed things because I know going to a podcast platform, I know a lot of people are going to be listening in ear, headphones, earbuds, something like that. Most people, that's how they consume their podcasts. Then I will move to monitors when it comes to a mix, but then I will also do at least one past listen through of the mix on headphones just to make sure that it's feasible in both spaces.
Yeah.
Again, that's something that's unique to a podcast area, wherein people are going to be listening on headphones, but I feel it's worth it.
Yeah. I mean, and honestly, a lot of video is that way these days too. I mean, if you think about it, like, if you think about anything that's put up on TikTok or YouTube, it's probably on headphones or worse, like speaker, like the speakers on the phone itself. Which you're like, oh.
Every time we put up an episode of the Legacy Saga and it goes out to all the podcast platforms, I will immediately, like the next morning, because it goes up at midnight, I will the next morning listen to it on my phone speakers because I'm like, I need to know if this played correctly,
Yep.
And most of the time everything's good, there's nothing missing, but there were some learning curves in the way of, like, I remember in one of our earlier episodes, to kind of give this sense of dread, I used a very kind of low tone, this ambient bed that was very low, and then I listened to it back on my phone speakers and I was like, you don't get that because it doesn't have the power to push it out. So I realized I'm like, oh, okay, I need to put more texture to it. In order for that to not be lost, I need to kind of play more in the higher frequency ranges so that doesn't get lost if people choose to listen to it on their phone speakers.
Yes.
So learning curve, big learning curve.
Yeah, for sure. So especially if you're trying to build that dread or the tension or whatever. Wow.
And there's a lot of moments like that in Legacy Saga. So yeah.
Based on Dungeons and Dragons, you'd expect. That's right.
High drama, baby. High drama.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. I'm getting a note here.
We have a lot of great questions.
Oh my gosh, great questions. Austin, how do you feel about taking some questions here?
I'm up for it.
All right, let's do it. Danny's going to comb through here and we're going to see what we can do here.
Let's see.
Just taking a look through. Also, while we're doing that, thank you to a few people that helped put all of this together. Thank you, of course, to Austin so much for taking out part of your Sunday to talk to us.
Here we go.
And then, here's some questions.
No, this isn't a question.
Oh, this is not a question. And then a thank you to actually Rob Christiansen, who is the producer for today's episode. Thank you so much, Rob. This would not have happened without all sorts of effort that Rob put in. And Austin actually answering Rob's email. So thank you for that as well. Okay. Rob says, I think Vox did a video game or a video going over the history of the Wilhelm screen. Yes. So it's starting to get a little bit more attention these days. I think for a long time it was an insider's joke. for sure. Here's one for you. Do you know Rick Suval? Suval? I don't know.
I do not. I'm
Okay.
kind of the one kind of sucky thing about being hired in the middle of, still a pandemic is I work entirely from home. I went to the Nick lot for literally the first time after working there for 6 months on Friday. And it is still no one is there. So I've been kind of disconnected from others, unfortunately, but looks like that'll be changing soon. So
Hopeful.
hopefully I can start
Yeah.
meeting more people and making connections.
Awesome. All right.
There was a question relating to that very topic, and so let me see if I can. It'll be out of order, but let me see if I can find that.
We have so much going on
here
in
we
the
go.
chat. Here we go. Okay. All right. Does your so this is Austin. Do you work remotely? Yes. And can you talk about the process?
Yes. So my very first day at Nickelodeon, they just sent me about 5 boxes worth of equipment. And my very first day, I just spent pretty much tearing down what I had and rebuilding it with what they have. So I have a whole separate computer for Nickelodeon that has all of our VPNs, all the connections to the remote servers, and stuff like that. And we do a lot of I talked about how we sit with the showrunners. That's all done via Zoom. Pretty much. So a lot of remote servers, a lot of just making things work via Zoom. Yeah.
So if you're reviewing a dialogue edit, for example, are you just transmitting that over Zoom? And I'm asking, this is a very selfish question. I'm asking this because I also work remotely and we sometimes do reviews. And yeah, there's the question.
Yeah. I'll usually use a program called Loopback Audio, which pretty much is a virtual microphone that allows you to pretty much pump the signal of whatever program you're using. For me, it's Pro Tools, and I will pump that directly into the Zoom so that they can kind of it will be compressed, obviously, but they can at least get the cleanest kind of feed directly out of Pro Tools into their ears.
Got it. Okay, good. And is that from Rogue Amoeba? Is that the Rogue
Yes,
Amoeba
it is.
Loopback? Okay. Very good. Good stuff. All right.
Okay, I think this one was answered, but
You already answered. Yeah, you've got your Audio Technica AT. What are they? Sorry, they're the
M50Xs.
50Xs. All right. What do you? Why the 50Xs? Just curious.
There's part of it's a sentimental attachment. I remember I bought these headphones for myself with my very first paycheck I ever got sound designing a freelance thing. But I find that they're very good for dialogue edits because they kind of just they're closed back, which definitely kind of helps isolate and kind of helps brings things forward. But I find they're really good at kind of just picking out those imperfections that I need to get rid of.
Very good. Very good.
and there's one for you too.
Tony, what earphone piece are you wearing in your left ear? Can you post a link, please? So I'll put these in afterwards. These are some Westone in-ear monitors. So yes, we'll do that, Tony. Thanks for that.
Okay, and this one was also answered, I think.
So we already talked about software you're working with. So Pro Tools, Isotope RX, a few Waves plugins there. Anything else of note?
I pretty much just live and die by Isotope RX8. I mean, that's where I spend pretty much all my time. So that's the life of a dialogue editor.
There you go, Shoji. That's it. All right.
I want to thank this person.
LP Scene, thanks so much for the super chat. We appreciate that.
Okay.
Here's
there
one.
Might be another.
No matter the creative game, it is an art form. As a sound artist, is there a dream project, sound canvas you want to achieve during your career? Wow.
Oh, goodness. I mean, I think the ultimate pie in the sky dream, I would love to work on something Star Wars.
Yes.
Just as someone who has a great passion for it. That would be absolutely surreal. Can
I be your assistant when you do that, please?
I'll put it down. I'll pull you in. You're going to have no other option.
All right.
Yeah, as a big fan of I'm a huge fan of science fiction in general. So I would love to get to work on kind of a sound dense sci-fi project, something in space, something, that would be everything.
Someday, not too far from now,
Hopefully.
I'm sure.
Okay.
Okay.
2 parts.
2-part question here. I usually record every character individually or sit down with all the actors and record them all at once. And here's the follow-up here. I did a couple of audio stories and usually did every character individually, but once I tried 2 characters at once, harder to mix, but the performance was better. So there's an interesting nuance.
Usually, I mean, like, preferably, I would like to do multiple characters at once. But again, the production of this happened in the middle of COVID. So a lot of the recordings, it wasn't feasible to get, 2 people in a booth together. So the way that we kind of, because we know on the back end, we're going to have to stitch together 2 people who may have been recording in different states, we try to ask for a lot of flexibility, give us a lot of different styles of read. So that when we go and we stitch things together, we have flexibility. We're not just tied to like one performance of the line that may or may not work with the line preceding it or, coming right after. That kind of gives us that type of flexibility to get that flow and get that kind of naturalistic feeling as if all these people were in the room together. So
yeah. So another layer of the complications that come with the current situation. So cool. Just roll with it. Okay. Can you give us a peek at the sound booth? It's probably absolutely beautiful, I bet.
If you don't mind me like picking up my camera, it will be very shaky. If you don't mind.
Let's do it. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
All right, here we go.
Let me see if I can get it too. So it has a pride flag on it, but that it's pretty much just a black box. It's pretty much just a black box. That's, you can see the PVC pipe right there, the white, and then it's just thick black sound blankets.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it. It's just a black box.
There you go. It gets the job done and does
it works.
Nicely.
When you go in there, it is very dead. I always have people, whenever they first come visit and they see the sound booth, I always have them I'm like, okay, clap out here in this room that we're in right now, and then go in there and clap. And then they go in there and clap, and they're like, oh my gosh, because it's so dead. There's no reverb in there. Which is the whole goal. So
that's what you want. So you can do all the magic in post instead.
Exactly. Get as clean as possible.
Cool. All right, Rob. Lawyers say law school taught them the law, but it was their first firm that taught them how to be a lawyer. Do you find this ringing true in the film world as well?
Definitely. One of the reasons that I chose Chapman's program specifically for film school was because they're constantly making films there. Like, constantly. There is always an influx of films being made. And I knew that, given I had no experience really going in, I had no experience with doing sound for film. And I knew that the best way to learn was to do it. I had to get my hands on films. I had to just start doing it, even if I didn't know what I was doing. So that was one thing I was very grateful with that program, was I was constantly working on films. And were the first few films I worked on any good? No, but I had to start somewhere. And so, very much the stuff I learned in the classroom was very important. It was a great foundation, but there was only so much I could learn that I could only learn by actually just going and making films, sound designing, and just kind of figuring it out along the way. I definitely agree with that analogy. Yeah. Definitely.
Good one, Rob. Yeah, and thank you. I completely agree. Hands-on is the way you really get that experience, and the depth that's where the depth comes, for sure. Mm-hmm. All right. When is RX used in the workflow?
It's pretty much the very last step before we hand it off to the other post house to handle the rest of the edit and the mix. The way the workflow works in animation on the Nick side of things, we get the recordings in, the raw recordings in from the actors. We go in, cut everything up, we pull the takes that the showrunners want to hear, get their seal of approval, and then we pass it off to animatics, and then we don't see it for a year minimum. Wow. In a year, we'll get it back from the editor that has all of our original records kind of in place. We'll get an AAF that has picture lock, and then all of our different clips. And from there, we will do ADR, and we will drop those into that session. And then once everything is locked in place, okay, nothing else has to be re-recorded, everything's good, then it gets cleaned. Only once that's locked, then everything gets cleaned. And I also go through, I remove all the breaths, I do fades. I also go through and if there's any spots where I feel like there's like an effort or a gasp or something, I'll go through our sound library and add those in to kind of just fill out the characters, fill out the space, which is a lot more fun than it sounds, in my opinion. And yeah, it just kind of is the very last step to get everything cleaned and pretty and ready to go before the rest of the edit and mix gets done.
Excellent. Okay, good. Curtis Jedi, don't you have a course on RX? Yes, we have an update on that at the end, so we'll come back to that.
Okay, the headphones has been answered, but not the monitors.
Oh yeah, so you've answered already about the headphones. We have Shoji Projections is interested in what monitors you use.
I have Yamaha 8s.
Okay, the big 8-inch. Boo, boo,
Yep.
boo, boo. You can shake the whole house if you need to.
Yeah, I got them secondhand off Reverb, like for half price, just because they had some scratches on like the external, like, part of the speakers, but they were otherwise perfect. So yeah, I love those.
And already burned in. You didn't have to do the burn-in period, so even
Bingo.
better. What's your go-to mic for dialogue and voiceover capture?
Completely depends on the project. It depends on like, are you doing? It depends on what sound you want. Usually for the Legacy Saga, we will use. I have in the booth an Audio-Technica AT2035, which is a large diaphragm cardioid condenser. Has a relatively kind of flat response, but it has a nice kind of. It's nice and warm. I knew that when we were going into that, when it came to mics, I wanted it to feel like a storybook. I wanted it to feel warm. I wanted the voices to feel very inviting. And so I knew I wanted kind of a large diaphragm cardioid condenser. So that's what we use.
There's art even in the technical
part.
Oh
my gosh, there's such art in picking microphones. It's insane.
Yeah, you could do that for years and years. Okay.
Yeah.
If you don't get to them all,
from Greg, yeah, we're sprinting to the end here.
Speed round.
So Greg, for noise reduction in RX, what's your tool of choice for broadband noise? So is that going to be the spectral denoise, the voice denoise, something else?
Generally, voice denoise does me pretty well. I try to go for that first because I know it's mindful of not gouging into the vocal quality, which again is something that you're always aware of as a dialogue editor. If there's something like a little more stubborn, then we'll go with spectral denoise. But I usually try to hit voice denoise first.
That's the same here. It's just much more straightforward, like it, and it's gentle.
Yes, very much so.
Do you find Zoom has good enough audio for critical review?
For what we're doing with the showrunners, where the showrunners are mainly, because at that point the audio isn't clean. It's still the raw audio. We'll do a little bit of leveling. We'll do a little bit of EQing in the way of just rolling off everything below 100 hertz, just to make it sound like a little bit cleaner. But what they're judging for in that moment is performance. Do I like the way that the actor is giving this line? That's the biggest thing for them. So for that job, it works just fine as long as we don't have any stalls or freezes or anything like that. It works for what we need in that job.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. Totally makes sense.
Okay,
Two-part question. How do we price our services regarding dialogue editing? Do you create price packages? And the second part is, in regards to pricing, how do you include your overhead? So, wow.
Goodness. Well, I am, because I'm no longer freelance. That's not a question, frankly, that I've thought of in a long time. I am also union. I'm IATSE Local 700. So I have kind of set rates depending on what the scale of the project is. Frankly, I wish I had a more in-depth kind of answer for you, but I'm not going to sit here and just pull something out of nowhere because I also don't want to give you any false information.
We respect that so much. Thank you.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I don't know everything.
All right. Is it hard for you to watch anything as a normal fan, or do you always hear how something can be better?
Yes. Oh my goodness. I feel like this is something no one talks about. I always like I had a few people tell me like when you go to film school, it's going to ruin watching movies for you. And I
Yeah.
thought they were just being pretentious, frankly. And then I got to film school and I was like, "Oh, okay, I get it." Because you were taught to be constantly analyzing and picking apart whatever you're taking in. And once your brain is trained to do that, it's very difficult to undo it.
Mhm.
I remember there was one like TV show. I won't name what it was, but there was a TV show I literally had to stop watching because the dialogue at it was so bad that it like upset me, and it took me out of the story. So I had to stop watching it entirely. And there was the same thing in a movie I saw recently. I was like, wow, that scene was oof.
Yeah. Yeah, for
It
sure.
can't be
No.
turned off. It can't be turned
Yeah.
off.
No, I've seen, especially in TV shows, I've noticed. I don't notice as much usually movies have the budget to fix it, but these were production issues. It sounded like there was this one scene where the main actor, and again, I won't name the show, but
Mhm.
the main actor was walking around a desk in an office, and it was like they didn't get any boom coverage, and the lav sounded horrible. Like it was a
Mhm.
completely. We were hearing this beautiful boom mic, and then cut. She walks around the desk saying another line, and it was like, what just happened there?
Yeah.
Probably
That's a
most of the
big
other audiences like, it didn't even cross their mind. But for me, it was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's a big thing with dialogue editing on live productions that I feel like all is a big part of the job is also being like, okay, what mic feed am I using? And
Yeah,
once you pick a mic feed, you gotta stick with it and make it work. Because once the audience is used to one thing, if you switch it to another mic, they're gonna be like, what was that?
yeah,
You know?
exactly. What happened? Am I still watching the
Yeah.
same thing? Yeah, for sure, for sure. Okay,
This one is also
here's
me.
another interest. Okay, do you ever run into conflicts with your finished product and the people you deliver it to? Interesting.
Occasionally. I mean, with Legacy Saga, it's being delivered to me. I'm the one who puts it everywhere. I always try to run it by as many ears as I can before we put it up. But when it comes to stuff like that, I just try to be as receptive and communicative as possible. I'm very big on just being quick response. You know, try to get it worked through as calmly as possible. Inevitably, you're going to run into conflicts. There's going to be times where it's like, hey, what happened to this thing? Where is this thing? And we needed this by this time. There's going to be miscommunications. The only thing that you really can do is just don't start screaming. Calmly. What matters is solving the problem at hand right there.
Yeah.
That's my kind of big approach to it.
Yep, agreed. Agreed. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah. And this is part of collaboration too. I mean, collaboration is to a large extent getting other perspectives and being able to absorb those. And sometimes people say things and you can have a disagreement and that's okay. It's okay.
Yep. It's inevitable.
So yeah, it's going to happen sometimes. Okay. Being your podcast is story focused, do you find yourself recording Foley or do you have a preferred sound library that you use?
I've kind of built out a little sound library for Legacy. A lot of like pre-recorded just footsteps on different materials and stuff like that. The little things, clothing rustle and stuff. I found myself having to very rarely record Foley because it's not tied to picture. I don't have to like individually cut footsteps to picture. It's like, okay, this pacing pretty much works. That is one very freeing thing about the project is like, oh, I can just kind of be free with whatever. If there's a very specific sound that like I can't find in a library or I find a library I'm not happy with, then I'll kind of pop into the booth and record a quick something. But usually I can pull from my little cobbled together library.
Very good. Very good. All right. We have time for one more, Danny.
Oh,
This is it. Danny's disappointed. She doesn't want the hour to be over yet.
okay. Here it is.
Here's the
last
big one. How do you know when you've become a better editor? In what ways do you challenge yourself to improve your skills?
Well, one of the things I love most about the area of sound is you will never know everything. You will always be learning something from it. My dad raised me on a lot of different sayings, but a saying that I very much take to heart is if you're not learning, you're not living. If you're not living, you're dying. And I love being in a field where it's constantly, I will always have something to learn. I will always have ways to grow. You won't know you've become a better editor in the moment. it's only when you'll look back and go, oh my gosh, look how far I've come,
Yeah.
that's when it'll hit you. And I'm constantly having those moments. Even, a year ago, I was saying that about myself the year prior, but even now I'm like, wow, look at where I was a year ago. It's a constant thing. You will always be growing. You'll always be looking back and looking at your growth and know that you're moving forward into growth. And in the way of challenging myself to improve my skills, I just keep doing it. Just keep doing it. I keep finding little ways to make things better. I keep experimenting, keep trying new things. Sound is a field where you can keep just experimenting until you find cool things. That's one of the reasons I'm so in love with, what I do. It's a giant sandbox that I get to play in all the time. So, yeah.
So great. So great. Yes. Love it. Austin, thank you. Oh, wait.
We have to do this one.
We have to do Sorry, we do have to do this one. What's the name of your podcast, and is it available on the normal podcast platforms?
Yes, the podcast is called The Legacy Saga. It has a purple cover. It's published by Welcome Mat Radio, and it is available everywhere you listen to podcasts. I made sure of it. So Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, it's on all of there. Just search The Legacy Saga. If you see a purple cover, that's us.
You nailed it. And we've got links down for all the things down below. So we've got your Twitters, your TikTok, the podcast, of course, all that's available in the description as well. So,
yeah. And we are about 24 episodes. Episode 24 of season 1 is releasing this week. And we release on a bi-weekly schedule. We only have about 10 episodes left in this first season. And go through our backlog, listen, and catch up on the story.
It's a great time to binge right now.
It is. It really is.
As soon as you're done, you can still get some new episodes this season.
Exactly. Go through the backlog.
Great. Austin, thank you so much for joining us today, for sharing your time and all the things that you've experienced. And thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun.
All right. Hopefully we can do it again sometime.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care. All right. Let's go here. And let me just run through a couple things real quick. We're gonna wrap up here. We do have the Isotope RX class coming soon. So for those that were not able to attend live, watch your email. If you're signed up at the school and you receive the emails, you will get an email here, hopefully in the next 24 to 48 hours, with the official launch of the Isotope RX course. Again, thank you to all those that helped so much with the show. So much thanks to Austin. Rob Christiansen was our producer today. Thank you, Rob. Danny was our technical director today. Thank you to Danny. There's her hand right there. And thank you also to Emma, who is moderating the chat. So everyone get out there and make some great sound, and we will talk to you again next week. Take care, everybody.